So many issues to catch up with. Let's bring in Greens MP, New South Wales Greens MP David Shoebridge joins me live from the Sydney CBD. Thanks for joining us again, David. You reckon Christmas Island is not good enough for Australians being flown out of Wuhan?
Well, I don't think you evacuate people who are, I'm certain, living in an environment of fear, anxious about their health, potentially facing critical health condition. You don't evacuate them to a prison that is more than 2,000 kilometres away from the nearest quality, full-service public hospital. I mean, it's an appalling idea to evacuate people from Wuhan to a standalone prison in the middle of the Indian Ocean. And the people in Wuhan who are desperate to be taken to safety, they've made it clear that they think it's a pretty appalling idea too.
Well, it's not a prison. It's a multi-million-dollar processing centre with excellent medical facilities, and Australian medicos there looking to care for people. You say
tomato, I say tomato. It's surrounded by razor wire and fences. It's got a large gate that locks. You can't escape it.
There's fences and locks at the Prince of Wales. Give me a break.
It's a prison. You can call it a detention facility if you like. I'll call it a prison, but I don't think that's the nub of the argument here. The nub of the argument is whether or not that's the right place to send people who we have a duty of care over, fellow citizens, who we want to make sure get world-class medical treatment, because you don't get it there.
This really strikes me as an example of the hyper-partisanship of Australian politics. Even something like this, a response to a medical crisis, people try and play politics over, what, because there's a connection to border protection. Are you suggesting we fly 200 people in and stick them into one of our existing hospitals in this country? You don't think that will create all sorts of additional medical and social problems, that this isolated quarantine facility at Christmas Island looks to be the logical outcome?
I'm suggested we treat them like citizens of Australia and give them first-class, guaranteed first-class medical treatment if they need it. You can't get that in Christmas Island. I'm suggesting that you don't jail people in a detention centre and then make them pay for it, almost certainly in breach of the Commonwealth Biosecurity Act. Making them pay for their own detention under a biosecurity order, almost certainly unlawful, and I don't know why the media hasn't investigated that more fully. And I'm suggested that we treat them like Australian citizens and bring them, if they need medical treatment, into one of our first-class hospitals.
Well,
and if they don't, we treat them in as we would anybody else we have concerns about. Maybe being potentially exposed to an infectious disease. We don't put them in a prison. That's right, Chris.
Absolutely. As usual, having Australian citizenship is the golden jackpot. It's the golden ticket in life, and they are being treated as Australian citizens with an evacuation. Hang on a second. Hang on. I didn't interrupt you.
They are Australian citizens.
Hang on. I didn't interrupt you. And this just demonstrates the value of that Australian citizenship. You've got a government that's looking to put on a charter flight to fly them out of China and bring them to the very best medical services they can provide at Christmas Island, where they'll be comfortable and isolated, and then brought to Australia. I just don't see how you can't see that as an Australian government trying to do the best for its citizens.
Now, Chris, you cannot fairly say, and I'm sure you're not intending to mislead, that the very best medical facilities that Australia can provide are provided at Christmas Island, because it does not have a public hospital. It does not have the suite of services you would need if you had a critical issue involving a flu-like disease. It just does not have that. You can't, in good conscience, you can't fairly say that.
Well, you can say...
What you get there is rudimentary medical treatment.
Well, it's not going to be rudimentary. They're sending specialist medical teams there. They'll be the very best people available. And the alternative you seem to be suggesting is you fly them all in here to St Vincent's or Prince of Wales, which is just not practical or fair to the other patients.
I'm saying, A, you treat them like full Australian citizens. You bring them back to the country, not to a detention centre in the middle of the Indian Ocean. You don't make them pay for it. You don't make Australian citizens pay for it, because it's almost certainly unlawful. And I urge you to have a look at the federal biosecurity laws and see how it's unlawful to make someone pay to comply with the biosecurity order.
Well, that is all.
And you bring them anybody in that situation as close as possible to the best possible medical services, and that's not in Christmas Island.